The Biden administration and lawmakers are closely following developments in Ukraine.
And joining us now with more insight on the U.S. response to the crisis, Illinois Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
First of all, where do you think this war is heading, and what more do you think the United States needs to do to stop it from escalating?
I think we have to do more of what we've been doing, which is supplying crucial armaments and surface-to-air missile systems, Stinger missiles, as well as Javelin anti-tank missiles to the Ukrainians who are fighting incredibly ferociously with great courage. And they are the ones who are bringing the Russians to the negotiating table. I'm hopeful that progress could be made there, but I'm still skeptical about the Russians because we need to see what they do, not just what they say.
Congressman, Russia claims they're withdrawing troops from Kyiv. Can that be confirmed by U.S. intelligence?
What we've heard from the intelligence community is that there have been some movements of troops, but not some kind of large-scale withdrawal, and certainly nothing that's irreversible, such that we can trust that the Russians are somehow, basically fundamentally changing their war strategy. We need to see more wide-scale movement of Russian troops, and we need to see them get out of the country, quite frankly.
What about Poland? A lot of Ukrainians are fleeing to Poland. Do you think that Russia could start attacking Poland? And if so, the U.S. would, of course, retaliate, I would think.
Well, Poland is a member of NATO, and under what's called Article 5 of the NATO Charter, we have pledged to defend any attack against any of our NATO allies, and that includes Poland. And so I hope that the Russians would not attack Poland knowing that they would have the full force of the West and the United States arrayed against them. All that being said, we have to be vigilant. We have to make sure that our NATO allies remain safe. So I think it makes sense to rush more troops and armaments to Poland and the eastern flank of NATO to discourage the Russians.
There are reports Ukrainian officials are ready to declare their country neutral, meaning that would abandon all hopes they might one day join NATO. Do you think that would give Vladimir Putin the win that he seeks?
I'm not sure. Vladimir Putin's aims in this war have changed, and we have to see exactly what comes out of the negotiating process. But what I know is that Ukraine must be allowed to determine its own destiny. And for Ukrainians, that means a democratic, peaceful Ukraine that has its own sovereignty.
Are you in accord with the president that we should not have U.S. troops on the ground?
Yes, we should not deploy U.S. troops to Ukraine. That would spark a direct conflict with the Russians, which could escalate out of control.
Speaking of escalating, do you think this could escalate to a World War III?
Well, if you had a direct confrontation and hostilities between the Russians and the United States, anything is possible. And so we don't want that to happen, and the American people don't want that to happen at the same time that we provide the Ukrainians what they need to defend themselves. Today I met with Ukrainian parliamentarians who came to Capitol Hill, and one of the things they said is they want more fighter jets, something that I and some of my Republican colleagues have joined together in asking the administration to facilitate. And they also need more modern munitions and armaments because they want to make sure that they have the edge on the Russians.
Congressman, you wrote in Newsweek that if Russia succeeds, this would embolden autocracies. So if they take Ukraine, will Russia face consequences forevermore?
Yes, I think so. And I think that's why it's incredibly important, first, to empower the Ukrainians to defend themselves. And they've, again, done an incredible job of bringing this to a stalemate on the battlefield so far. But we also need to put the Russians on notice that we are going to be watching them very closely. We are also going to be holding them accountable for war crimes in Ukraine and elsewhere. And we're going to continue to do everything we can to defend democracy. We have a big Ukrainian American community in the suburbs, including in my own congressional district. And I have to say that not only they, but all of the communities in the area, regardless of their ethnicity, stand with them.
Illinois Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thank you so much. Be safe, be well.
You too. Thank you so much.